There were two toothbrushes in the cup. Hers was orange. Mine was blue. But that orange toothbrush, it changed everything. I know, weird way to start. But sometimes, it's not a lipstick stain or a hotel receipt that ruins your life. Sometimes it's a cheap orange toothbrush sitting exactly where it shouldn't be. Let me explain. 2 weeks ago, Lena was supposed to be visiting her sister in Vermont. She packed light, just to carry on. I offered to drive her to the airport, but she called a rideshare instead. Said she didn't want me driving in the snow. Fair enough. Except, it wasn't snowing. The first red flag, and I missed it. But I wasn't looking for flags. I was doing laundry, cleaning up the apartment. And while wiping down the bathroom sink, I noticed something strange. Her toothbrush was still there. Now listen. Lena's obsessive about oral hygiene. She takes that stupid orange toothbrush everywhere. I've seen her argue with hotel staff in Rome because they gave her a complimentary brush, and she refused to use anything except her approved bristles. So, why was it still here? I called her. No answer. Texted. She replied, "In a spa session, phone off soon. All good. Miss you." I stared at the orange toothbrush. Sitting there, dry as the desert. Untouched. Something inside me cracked. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. The jealous loser. The Reddit cliché. So I waited. Quietly. Like a dog at the door. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the apartment again. I don't know what I was looking for. Clues. Scent. Guilt trapped in the furniture? That's when I saw it. The wine glass in the sink. We hadn't used wine glasses in over a month. I'd stopped drinking after New Year's. She only drank white wine. This one had red residue. Not hers. Someone else had been here. While I was working late. While I was making excuses for her distance. While I was pretending we were fine. So I did something I've never done before. I waited. 3 days later, she came home. Smiling. Fake tan. Fresh lashes. Hugged me like nothing happened. We sat down. She kicked off her shoes. Talked about her sister's new boyfriend. I just nodded. And then, as calmly as I could, I said, "Why do you leave your toothbrush behind?" She blinked. Just once. Then shrugged. I was rushing. Forgot. I nodded again. Slowly. Then whispered, almost gently, "Not now? Fine. But tomorrow, I'm gone." She laughed like it was a joke. She didn't know I meant it. She didn't know I'd already seen what was on her laptop. She didn't know I had a plan. But in 24 hours, I'd whisper something else. Something final. I didn't leave the next day. I waited. Because something in her reaction that night, it didn't sit right with me. She didn't flinch when I brought up the toothbrush. She didn't stutter. She didn't do that fake innocent thing guilty people do. She just shrugged and walked into the bedroom like we just talked about takeout. That's when I knew two things. She wasn't scared because she didn't think I had the spine to do anything. She was right, at least back then. But I stayed up. Not to confront her, not to argue. Just to observe. Like some pathetic detective in his own house. Watching shadows move and hoping they give away secrets. At 2:43 a.m., she went to the kitchen. I heard the fridge open. Then a long pause. I peeked around the corner. She was standing in the glow of the fridge light, just staring. Not reaching for anything. Not moving. Just staring. That moment stayed with me. Like she was lost in a memory. Or maybe haunted by one. The next morning, she left for work. At least, I assumed it was work. Lena was one of those freelance marketing consultants who somehow always had money and never shared a schedule. A perfect job for lying, now that I think about it. I waited 15 minutes after she left, then grabbed her laptop. And no, I'm not proud of this part. I don't like being the guy who snoops. But this wasn't curiosity. It was survival. I had to know what kind of reality I was actually living in. I opened the laptop. She never logged out of anything. Not her browser, not her Google Drive, not even her Notes app. I clicked Chrome, and there it was. A tab still open. Private folder, Damien. My stomach flipped. Damien. I didn't know a Damien. But her fingers apparently did. I opened the folder. Photos. Lots of them. Blurry selfies in hotel mirrors. Him in a towel. Her in nothing. Dates. Timestamps. Locations. A full year's worth of lies packed neatly into a shared Google Drive folder like a twisted scrapbook. There was a screenshot of a text conversation labeled, "Just in case he ever asks." Him. You think he suspects anything? Her. He suspects everything. But he's too soft to act. Him. Poor guy. Her, yeah. Poor Walter. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just closed the laptop and sat there. Still. Frozen. Somehow that was worse than rage. There's a kind of silence that fills your lungs like smoke. And you can't scream because you're already suffocating. I didn't leave that night either. Because a different part of me woke up. Not the Walter who buys flowers and says sorry when he's not at fault. Not the Walter who waits on the couch with takeout and a desperate heart. No, this Walter wanted something else. And as I sat there in the dim light of betrayal, I started thinking, if she thinks I'm too soft to act, maybe it's time I give her a reason to be afraid. By the end of that day, something inside me had broken, and I didn't want to fix it. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to feel it. Not by yelling, not by confronting, not by crying. I wanted the silence between us to grow teeth. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I closed it slowly, deliberately, like I was sealing a casket. I didn't delete the photos. I downloaded them. Every screenshot, every message, every picture of Damien in his smug little towel. I moved them to a new folder on my own device and renamed it Invoices Q4. Fitting, since I was about to bill her for every lie she charged to my heart. Now here's the twist. I didn't want revenge. Not the cartoonish kind, anyway. No burning clothes. No social media exposés. I didn't even want Damien to know. I didn't care about him. I wanted her to implode from the inside out. So I waited until the next Friday. That was her girls' night. Always suspiciously vague. Just the girls. No names, no photos, no drunk selfies, which was very un-Lena. I told her I'd be working late. In truth, I took the day off and drove 2 hours out of town to a little antique shop she'd never heard of. There, I bought a vintage cassette recorder. Not a digital one. Not something that could be hacked or erased. Something old, clunky reel, with a red record button that clicked when you pressed it, just like the one my father used to record his therapy sessions. I set it up in our bedroom. Don't ask how. I won't share specifics. Let's just say Lena isn't the only one who can be clever with secrets. She left that night wearing a black leather jacket she only ever puts on when she wants to feel dangerous. She kissed me on the cheek, told me not to wait up, and practically danced out the door. I sat on the couch with the lights off. I didn't watch TV. I didn't scroll my phone. I didn't drink. I just listened to the quiet. At 11:12 p.m., the front door creaked open. Too quiet. Not like Lena. She's always loud with her keys. She usually sings under her breath when she's tipsy. But this night, dead silent. I stayed perfectly still. She didn't know I was home. And she wasn't alone. I heard 2 sets of footsteps. His were heavier. They didn't go to the kitchen. Didn't go to the bathroom. They went straight to the bedroom. My stomach clenched, but not with jealousy. It was something colder. Something older. Like the death of pride. I heard murmurs. Laughter. Fabric. Zippers. A giggle that didn't sound like Lena anymore. It sounded like a stranger using her voice. Then silence. Then the sound of a cassette clicking softly in the dark. I waited until morning. They were still asleep when I left the apartment. And when I left, I didn't just walk away from the building. I walked away from the old Walter. Because from that point forward, I wasn't the man who'd been cheated on. I was the man writing the ending. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't tired. I felt electric. Like the rage had burned off all my sleep and left only clarity behind. It was surreal, watching the city wake up. People jogging, dogs barking, buses growling through intersections, while I carried the weight of 2 people's betrayal in my pocket. The cassette was still warm when I played it back in my car. I listened to exactly 9 minutes and 34 seconds before I turned it off. I didn't need to hear more. Their voices had already tattooed themselves across my brain like graffiti on a church wall. The funny thing is, once you know the truth, you stop chasing it. I wasn't obsessed with proof anymore. I had it. And knowing gave me options. Knowing let me breathe. Because now I could stop living like a man desperate for answers and start living like a man building something final. So I went home. She was in the shower. Alone again. Good. That meant he didn't stay. Or maybe she made him leave. Who cares? I didn't even glance at her. I walked right past the bathroom and into the living room, opened my laptop, and started my little project. I created a fake email address, something bland and anonymous, like H. Lockwood, consulting at ProtonMail.com. I made it look corporate, official. Then I mocked up a sleek, professional offer letter using a free online resume builder. The company name didn't matter. The job title didn't matter. What mattered was the salary. 6 figures. Remote. Flexible. Exactly what Lena had been dreaming of. I sent it to her personal email with a little message that read, "Hi Lena, you've come highly recommended. We'd like to consider you for a discreet consulting opportunity. We've reviewed your background and would love to begin a conversation. Let us know if you're available to speak this week." I didn't tell her about it. I wanted to see if she'd mention it first. She didn't. That night at dinner, she was glowing. I asked her if something happened. She smiled and said, "No, just had a really productive day." Then she changed the subject. She always changed the subject when a lie was still in her mouth. I let her talk. She rambled on about some algorithm shift she was tracking for a client. Probably nonsense. While I spooned mashed potatoes onto her plate like we were still pretending to be normal. I even laughed at her joke. God, I must have looked so believable. But the truth was, every second I looked at her, I imagined how small her world would feel once the floor dropped out. The next morning, I sent a follow-up from the fake email. Just a short note. "Hi Lena, curious if you had a chance to review our proposal. We're hoping to lock in this position soon." She replied from her phone while we were sitting in the same room. I watched her do it. She thought she was being clever, tilting the screen away like I didn't exist. I didn't say a word. Her reply was chipper, enthusiastic. She said she was very interested, asked about details. I gave her everything she wanted. Timeline, pay structure, benefits. All fake, of course. But it didn't matter. She was hooked. I could see it in her eyes. The dopamine of a new opportunity hitting her bloodstream. And that's when I knew she wasn't going to confess. Not now. Not ever. Because people like Lena don't apologize. They pivot. They rebrand. They escape accountability by skipping to the next version of themselves. But I wasn't going to let her rebrand this time. I was going to leave fingerprints all over her new life before it even started. I was going to make her doubt every email, every job, every handshake. I was going to turn her ambition into paranoia. And best of all, I was going to do it without ever raising my voice. This wasn't revenge. This was a slow unraveling. The kind you don't notice until the knots are around your own throat. 3 days later, Lena was pacing the living room like a kid waiting to open presents. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up like it was a newborn. I watched her as she answered, her voice bright, rehearsed. She even cleared her throat first. To sound prepared. It was the fake recruiter. Or rather, me. Using an AI voice mask and a burner number, I routed through 3 different services. Yeah, I know. That sounds unhinged. But when your wife uses your home like a bed and breakfast for the man she's cheating on you with, you stop playing fair. You start learning things. Things like how to spoof an IP address, how to fake LinkedIn profiles, and how to make your voice sound like a man named Mitchell Hawthorne, senior partner at Lockwood Consulting. I gave Mitchell a light southern drawl. Approachable, but not sloppy. I told her we were building a boutique advisory team focused on digital brand migration strategies, which I'm pretty sure means nothing, but Lena lapped it up like gospel. She ate every word. She started dressing up more. She wore perfume to Zoom meetings. She was glowing in a way that had nothing to do with me. But this time, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the puppeteer, watching her dance on invisible strings. Watching her think she was one step ahead when in reality, she hadn't even left the maze. The best part? I gave her tasks. Fake assignments. Prep work before the fake interview. I told her the role would require a presentation on brand autonomy under accelerated client acquisition conditions. Total nonsense. I gave her 48 hours. She skipped a dinner with her sister. Stayed up late watching webinars on business jargon. I sat in the other room, pretending to sleep, listening to her mutter words she didn't understand into her laptop. It was intoxicating. I wasn't hurting her with fire. I was slowly melting the floor under her feet. But I wasn't done. I needed someone real in her life to confirm the illusion. So I found Morgan. Morgan was Lena's ex-coworker from a short-lived freelance contract last year. They stayed connected on social media, but hadn't seen each other in months. Morgan was sharp, bored, and just chaotic enough to help, especially after I messaged her anonymously with a screenshot of Lena's affair and a generous cash offer. Her reply? This *TCH slept with a married client while we were on a project. Say less. I'm in. God bless Morgan. She didn't have to do much. Just casually mention in a public Instagram story that she had recently touched base with Mitchell from Lockwood about a possible project, and tag Lena's burner account, the one she used for networking. It took less than 12 hours for Lena to take the bait. That night, she came to me looking excited, not guilty. She talked about how weird it was that Morgan had randomly mentioned the same firm. I nodded, pretending to be surprised. She said it felt like a sign. I said, maybe it is. She kissed me on the cheek. And just like that, the woman who'd invited another man into my bed was now thanking me, unknowingly, for orchestrating her fake future. You might think this is where it ends, where I reveal the ruse, destroy her reputation, or dump her in public. But that would have been too clean, too fast. I didn't want to crash. I wanted a slow bleed, because something had changed in me, something fundamental. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about control, not over her, really, but over the part of me that had always been walked on, overlooked, dismissed. The part of me that used to ask, what did I do wrong, was now asking, how much can I get away with before she notices? And the answer, so far, was everything. But the next move? That would be the beginning of the end. Because next, I was going to introduce her to someone she really didn't want to meet. Her own guilt. By the following week, Lena had completely rearranged her life for a job that didn't exist. She'd bought a new blazer, switched to decaf for clarity, started using words like synergy and pitch deck in everyday conversation. I didn't even recognize her voice anymore. She wasn't just believing the lie. She was building her future around it. A future I controlled. And that's when I knew it was time to escalate. Not destroy. Not yet. Just tighten the strings until she started to feel them. So I wrote an email. Just a few sentences. Nothing graphic. Nothing legally threatening. Just enough weight to feel dangerous. The kind of message that sticks in your head all day and whispers to you in the shower. Subject, what you're hiding. You're not as careful as you think. Clean up before someone else notices. A friend. I created another burner account and scheduled it to send at 4:17 a.m., a time no sane person checks email, but one guaranteed to greet her when she first wakes up. It was a nudge, a flick to the glass of her curated life. The kind of thing that makes a person paranoid not just about what they've done, but who knows. She didn't mention it the next day, but I watched her. She was off, distracted, fidgety. She triple-checked the locks when she left the apartment, and when she came back, she went through her spam folder like it owed her answers. I noticed her switching tabs faster, like someone might be watching. She didn't ask me to make coffee like usual. She made her own, and forgot to drink it. That night, I planted another seed. I walked into the kitchen, acting casual, and said, "Hey, did you ever get that weird email this morning? I got something strange around 4 a.m. from a friend. Thought maybe it was a scam." She froze. Then, and this was masterful, she played it cool. Said no, nothing came through. Smiled too wide. Took a sip of the coffee she'd forgotten 6 hours earlier. Now she was the one walking on eggshells. She started turning off her phone when I entered the room. Her laptop lived in her backpack now. Passwords changed. But I didn't need to break into anything anymore. I didn't care what she was doing. I cared how she was reacting. Because the thing about guilt is, it doesn't grow in the light. It grows in the cracks, in the silence, in the maybe he knows. And I was giving her just enough silence to drive herself insane. But the real brilliance came with what I did next. I reached out to Damien. Yes, him. The man who thought I was too soft to act. The one who called me poor Walter, like I was some kind of orphan in a Dickens novel. He didn't know it was me, of course. I used another fake email, this time styled like a whistleblower, subject line. Thought you should know. I attached screenshots. Nothing damning, just breadcrumbs. His name, her name, timestamps, a photo that showed the edge of my nightstand. Just enough to scare him into thinking something was slipping. He replied with a single line. Who is this? I didn't respond. Why would I? The goal wasn't conversation. It was corrosion. And sure enough, Lena's mood shifted again. She became clingy. Kept checking in with me. Texting me during the day. Asking if I wanted to do something spontaneous this weekend. She brought home my favorite ice cream. I don't even eat ice cream anymore. That's how long it had been since she paid attention. But it was too late for reconciliation. This wasn't a marriage anymore. This was theater. And I had one final act to stage before the curtain dropped. That weekend, while she was out buying wine and pretending nothing was wrong, I went into her laptop one last time. Not to look, but to leave something. I placed a single text file on her desktop. It was titled, "Are you sure he doesn't know?" Inside, just one sentence. "You locked the door, but the window was open the whole time. I didn't sign it. I didn't touch anything else. And when she saw it, I wasn't even in the room. She screamed, but I didn't run to her. I let the silence answer for me. There's something strange that happens when you've spent weeks pretending to be someone else, pretending to be strong, pretending to be patient, pretending to be 2 steps ahead. Eventually, you start to forget which version of you is the real one. That's what happened to me. For a while, I believed I was in control. Like I'd won. Like Lena was just a character in my plan. But the morning after she found the file I planted with my own hands, something cracked, and I'm not proud of it. She was sitting at the kitchen table, barefoot, knees pulled up like a child. She hadn't slept. I could tell by the way her fingers trembled on the mug, her eyes glassy but alert. Her phone was face down. Her laptop closed. I hadn't seen either of those things in that state since the affair began. I stood in the doorway, and for one brief second, I thought she was going to say it. The truth. A confession. A moment of raw humanity. Her lips even parted like something real was trying to escape. But all she said was, "Did you hear anything strange last night?" I smiled and told her no. She nodded and stared back into her coffee. That was it. That was her chance. That was the one thread left between us that she could have used to pull herself out of the hole. And she left it there, dangling. So I moved on to the final step. Not revenge. Not exposure. Just removal. I started making lists. Quietly. Calmly. One for the things I'd take with me. One for the passwords I'd change. One for the names of people who deserved to know what kind of person she really was. Not to punish her. Just to tell the truth. Like carving the word liar into the bark of a tree. So it's there. Even after the leaves fall. I went to the bank. I moved my savings to a private account. I unlinked everything that had both our names on it. I deleted the shared calendar. Canceled the utilities. I did it methodically, without spite. Like I was erasing a hard drive. Not because I hated what was on it, but because I no longer needed it. At night, I slept on the couch. She didn't ask why. In the morning, I'd watch her from the hallway. She'd make her coffee slower now. Like she was waiting for something to happen. She flinched when her phone buzzed. She started locking the bathroom door again, but now I think it was to cry, not to hide. She began asking questions. Small ones. Harmless on the surface. Have you felt off lately? Did you change your email password? Did you touch my charger? Each question a breadcrumb. Each one a tiny panic wrapped in politeness. I gave her nothing. I answered like a man half listening to a podcast. And that terrified her more than yelling ever could have. I had become someone she couldn't predict. And that, I finally understood, was why she betrayed me in the first place. Because the old Walter? The one who wrote her love notes on grocery receipts and cried during Apple commercials? That Walter was predictable, gentle, safe. And in her world, safety meant weakness. But this version of me? This version was quiet and empty and unreadable. And that made me dangerous. The truth is, I wasn't just leaving Lena. I was leaving me. The version of myself who begged for connection, who tiptoed around tension, who thought love meant sacrifice at any cost. I was finally letting that part of me die. But here's the thing I hadn't planned for. While I was preparing my final exit, packing pieces of myself into metaphorical boxes and deleting the digital trails of our life together, I received a message. An anonymous DM on my barely used Reddit account. No name. No avatar. Just one sentence. She's not done lying to you. Look under the bed. My stomach dropped. Not because I thought it was a prank, but because I never mentioned any of this online. Not the affair. Not the plan. Not the file on her desktop. Nothing. And yet someone knew. I stared at that message for a full minute before I moved. When I finally did, I walked to the bedroom like I was wading through concrete. Every step felt like a dare. I got down on one knee and lifted the bed skirt. There was a box. A shoebox I didn't recognize. And inside, a phone. Burner. Locked. I sat there for a long time, holding it in my hands. Not angry. Not broken. Just tired. And now I had a choice to make. Walk out the door as planned, or open that phone and see just how deep the rot really went. I stared at that burner phone under the bed for what must have been an hour. It sat in my hand like a living thing, humming with secrets, daring me to unlock it. I could feel the weight of everything it might contain. More lies, more pictures, more of Damien's smug little texts, more proof that she never loved me the way I wanted her to. But I didn't open it. Not because I didn't care. Because I finally did. I finally cared about myself more than I cared about confirming one more betrayal. You don't realize how much energy you waste chasing closure until you stop. Until you realize that knowing every last detail won't heal you. It'll just chain you to the worst version of yourself. And I'd lived there long enough. So I stood up. I put the phone back in the box, slid it under the bed, and walked out of the bedroom without looking back. That night, I made dinner. Not for her. For me. Something simple. Salmon, rice, and the kind of salad she used to mock me for liking. I poured a glass of water, turned on the record player, one of the few things in our apartment that was always mine, and listened to Nina Simone hum softly while I ate. She walked in just as I was finishing. Her face looked worn, like she'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. Maybe she had. Guilt does that. Or maybe it was fear. I don't know. She sat down across from me, but didn't speak. We just sat there, quiet. 2 ghosts sharing a kitchen. Then I said it. Calmly. Gently. I'm leaving tomorrow. She didn't ask why. She didn't ask where. She just nodded. And in that moment, I think we both knew it was already over. No big speech. No final fight. Just 2 people who'd hollowed out a life together, now standing on opposite shores of the same quiet sea. The next morning, I packed only what mattered. A few clothes. My laptop. My notebooks. The poem book I wrote her years ago, but not to keep. To remind myself I was capable of love once. And maybe again someday. As I was walking out the door, she called my name. Not Walter. Not Babe. Just my name. I turned. She looked smaller than I remembered. Like a version of herself that had been left out in the rain too long. I'm sorry, she said. And for once, it sounded like she meant it. I didn't say anything back. Not because I was angry, but because forgiveness doesn't always need words. Sometimes the most merciful thing you can do for someone, and for yourself, is to walk away before the apology turns into another cycle. So I left, and I didn't look back. Now, it's been 7 months. I live in a small town by the water. I rent a 2nd-story apartment with creaky floors and too much sunlight. I volunteer at a local library on weekends. I started writing again. Real writing. Not just venting or scheming or drowning in pain. Stories. Poems. Thoughts that don't revolve around someone else's betrayal. I even started seeing someone. Her name is Elise. She works at the bakery next to the bookstore. She talks with her hands and laughs with her whole chest. And the first time she kissed me, I didn't flinch. I didn't compare. I just closed my eyes and let it be new. I haven't told her about Lena yet. Not because I'm hiding it, but because she deserves to know me, not just the ruins I came from. So yeah, I guess this story doesn't end with vengeance. No explosive showdown. No courtroom drama. No viral takedown. Just peace. And honestly, that's better than anything I ever imagined when I whispered farewell in that kitchen. Because for the first time in years, I meant it.